Merry Christmas, coaches, parents, athletes. This is the Coaching Life Podcast, episode number 80. And I just want to take the opportunity on behalf of Pat and myself to say thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of our conversation over this past year. This is probably the second to last podcast episode that Pat and I will do in year 2020. And we just want to take a moment to reflect on where we've been over the past 9 or 10 months or so and talk about how it's impacted our lives and the lives of the people that we interact with and coach and live with and see and speak to on a daily or weekly basis. But we hope that this has been an encouraging journey for you this year. We hope that the Coaching Life Podcast has provided a level of challenge, a means of hope, a means of joy at times. And we pray that that is something that will continue for as long as you keep listening. As long as we get the opportunity to do it, we will. And so we thank you, and we look forward to another episode of the Coaching Life Podcast, which starts right now. We welcome everybody to the Coaching Life Podcast. This is Christmas week, so it's our Christmas week podcast. And if you were looking for one from last week, you probably noticed that we didn't post one last week. And that's because, well, like I said before, Pat's really busy, guys. He's just really busy.
I'm not blaming you.
Good evening, Pat. Good evening, partner.
Hey, Coach. I think we should point out real quick that if everyone could see what you see right now, their perception of me and my fondness for the Christmas season may change because I have a festive background.
Man, your house looks good.
Yeah.
You got a hot fire going behind you. That tree looks fantastic. Those stockings that are on the mantle there. Yeah, you guys have done that. You even have a wooden rocking chair sitting beside your tree. That's where you sit. You gather Jeremiah and Jake and Chastity at night, and you sit down in that rocking chair with a Santa hat on, don't you? And you probably read them Christmas stories at night, don't you?
I tell them the reason for the season.
Mm-hmm. You read from,
as everybody
Luke
knows,
chapters 1 and 2. Yeah. Right. You know what's funny, Pat? This is something that I brought up this morning. And since it's Christmas week, we can talk a little bit about Christmas, I guess. But I had an idea. I'm actually, for the audience, for people who are listening, we're coming into this tonight cold turkey. Pat has no idea the topic I have in mind for tonight. And I don't even know that I have a topic in mind. But I said, I've got an idea, and I'll just run with it cold. And he's like, all right, cool. That's just how good he is. He can bounce off of anything. But this morning, one of the things that I pointed out about the Christmas story, and I'm talking about this morning in church because we're recording this on a Sunday afternoon, and so this is still fresh in my mind. When I was teaching this morning, one of the things that we looked at specifically was all of the really humble and small ways that Christ came into the world. Because really, I mean, if anyone doesn't know, the reason why we celebrate Christmas is because of the story, the reality of and the facts that Luke so thoroughly investigated for us and put in his gospel and wrote down about the birth of Christ. And it's just really wild to me that everything that took place in that event was extremely humble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he instead of coming to a large city, he goes to Bethlehem. He's born in Bethlehem, and there's not much fanfare there outside of the angels speaking to the shepherds in the fields and saying, "Hey, go check this out in Bethlehem. There's been a child born in the city of David. He's Christ the Lord." And
not in a hospital.
Not in a hospital. That's right. He was laying in a stable. That's right. And in fact, he was born to a virgin girl named Mary who lived in a little small rural hick town called Nazareth. So he didn't come to someone who lived in a big city. This would have been a peasant girl, not somebody who was big and famous and had a lot of popularity and a lot of people would have known her. In fact, sending an angel to shepherds to go and and see him, to be some of the first people to gather around him. Shepherds were kind of a nobody group of people as well. They were some weird, if you do some historical study on shepherds, they were weirdos. I mean, these were guys that they slept outside,
right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they were loners. I mean, they were constantly around their flocks. And so they really, and some people even in that day looked at them as kind of outcasts and even crooks, and they didn't trust them because they didn't come to the temple and observe all the same religious ceremonies and sacrifices like all the other Jews in that day, because they didn't have time. They couldn't. It's from what they were doing. And so to come to shepherds and say, hey, we want you to go and see, you'd be the first ones to see. And, where's he at? Well, he's in this little small town in the city of David, which, by the way, had been prophesied hundreds and hundreds of years before, very specifically where he would be born. And to come to such a unknown family, and what I said was, it's interesting to me the way all of the events took place around Christmas, the way we celebrate it, and what comes to our minds when we think of Christmas is usually like big, beautiful, lit up trees and shopping bags, and and all the stuff that we do. Those Christmas parties and gatherings and dressing up and getting new clothes and having all these these wonderful, and it's like we literally celebrate this holiday in the exact opposite way that it originally happened.
Yeah.
And it was just something that really struck me today as we consider what we're entering into this week. And so, for those of you that maybe don't think about that a lot, take a moment and consider that this week as you think about Christmas and what it is that you're doing. And the reality is, folks, it doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be something that you max out credit cards and feel like you got to one up the Christmas that you had for your kids last year and things like that. Find a way to, perhaps if there's ever been a year where you can change tradition, by gosh, this is the year.
I wish you'd have given this message
a month or two ago. That's true. It's a little late now, isn't it, for a lot of people?
Everyone, specifically myself and my wife, have kind of already done the deed, so to speak. So
sure. Yeah,
that's a good point. We've never really considered ourselves a religion-based podcast or a Christianity podcast, but I think we've never been shy about sharing that part of our life and part of our beliefs to us. And when I think about Christ left a perfect place.
Yeah.
To become an imperfect, or to join imperfect, not to become, to join imperfect people.
Yeah.
And to do the will of the Father. So it's a story of humbleness.
Yeah.
And of serving, right? Of servitude.
That's
it's easy
really
to overlook that.
It is. Because it's like I said, we celebrate it in the exact opposite way than it truly happens. So I think if we pause and consider that for a little bit, and just to appreciate the gift that we have been given, in the fact that there is grace available when you've screwed up. There is hope. Like right now, there's probably no greater need for the message of hope than right now. Right. And that's really what this is about. And that's what Christmas is about. And so I just want to, I really want, and honestly, Pat, that's kind of what I want to talk about tonight, is this issue of hope and giving people hope.
We'll talk about it.
I had a thought. And this is relevant. This is absolutely relevant to student athletes and to coaches. And there's something I want to say to coaches. There's something I want to say to athletes, and there's something I want to say to parents. And there's something I want to say to anyone who's involved with leading athletes. So I would say athletic directors, people who are involved in athletic boosters, people who are advocates of our student athletes right now. If you do a year in review, like if we look back, here we are at the end of the year, And if we look back at the Coaching Life podcast, this time last year, you and I were doing the 12 days of coaching, and it was a lot of fun. And then we turned the new year, started a new season for the podcast, and things were exciting. We were rolling. And then about the mid-March hit, and we didn't know what, like, you and I recorded a podcast on the day that we were shutting down the college here. The university was sending people home, and I'm like, well, we'll go ahead and record, and I don't know what's going on. We had a lot of questions and things like that. And here we are now, 9 months later, and it's not been easy for a lot of people.
Definitely.
It's been tough.
Yeah.
I had a thought that came to me this week, and this is, I want to qualify this by saying this is a general thought. This is not a specific thought. It's not a reactionary thought. It's not pointing fingers in any way at all. But it's going to sound probably pretty passionate about it. I'll admit that before I say it. If I were a person right now in charge of athletes in some measure, if I had any kind of leadership role for student athletes, kids right now that are in school playing sports, so that would be middle school students, high school, certainly high school students. So we should start there. Varsity athletes from your seniors down.
Yeah.
Pat, I would do everything in my power to make this a special time for these kids.
Yeah.
Because it's not. It's not. It sucks. It absolutely sucks for them. And I get it that it's hard for everyone, not just the kids. But listen, we say it all the time. Why do we coach? What's it about? Why are you an athletic director? Why do you get involved in the athletic boosters? Why do you take your kids to, it's for the kids. It's for the kids. It's for the kids. Well, you know what? If it's for the kids, right, there's no better time than right now for you to go the extra mile, the extra 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 miles to make this better than it is. Because right now, things are not good. And if you get a chance to play, for example, Pat, here's an example. One of the things I really have enjoyed is I've gotten to see multiple games in a particular week. Like you guys, you're coaching a middle school team down in Meigs County and for the Meigs local school district and middle school boys, and your guys play at the same nights that the varsity girls play, and we watch our niece play, Mallory play on those same nights as well. And I got to tell you, buddy, Meigs local school district is top notch when it comes to putting stuff online. You guys have done a really great job. People, and I know a lot of that is because of the advocates, because you've got people in leadership positions who care about it and want to make sure it gets done. Heck, your wife is one of those people. She doesn't have a 7th grader, but she's sitting there with a camera and a tripod, and she is putting that out live so that people who can't be there want to be there. There are a lot of people who want to go to these games, who want to see these kids play, grandparents, grandpa, grandma, aunts, uncles, heck, in some cases, a mom or a dad or a stepmom and a stepdad, and they don't even have enough tickets to be able to give them. Brothers, sisters, cousins, not to mention these kids' friends. The students who are getting the shafts. I mean, listen, every Tuesday and Friday, these student sections are packed. Right. I just looked at some Facebook pictures. Like, Mike Kennedy posted a picture, one of those Facebook memories from a few years ago of his son, at a girls' game leading those cheers, those roller coaster cheers in front of the student section. And I thought, wow, what year is that? We haven't seen that in forever, right? And so how do we then This is the circumstance we're in. This is the plight we're given, right? The COVID-19 plight where we can't send everybody to the gym. So what do we do then to make it special? You go the extra mile to put this stuff online, and you post it in every social media you could possibly post it in. You blast it in every Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. You send emails out to everybody in the district. You say, hey, look, these are the events that are happening tonight. This is who's playing tonight. I highlight a different player every single week saying, look, this senior is our senior that we're highlighting this week, and I'm putting that person's picture on every single social media we've got. I'm putting commercials out about the game that we got coming up this Friday night. We're doing everything we possibly can to say, you know what, this is the circumstance we're in, but by gosh, this is not going to be something we're not going to let another senior class get screwed. If they're at least getting to play, we're going to do everything we can, because it's not just about those kids that are on the floor. It's about these people who can't see the games either.
Right.
You know, there have been times when I've looked for some games. I knew that, a team was playing, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to watch their game tonight. Can't find it. Why is that?
Yeah.
Why is that? I just gotta, because when I see, I see your school district, and if anybody's got an excuse like, well, we live in the sticks and we can't get internet to work, listen, that's bull crap. Because I know where Megs is at. I know where you guys are at. I know what the internet service is like down there, and I know what the support system's like there. And I know this: you guys have put one of the best online shows for people who want to see the games. That you got the score on the screen the whole time. You even got somebody sitting underneath the camera, broadcasting it like it's a broadcast. Listen, make it an elective for students, for crying out loud. Don't tell me there aren't students in a school of 600 or 700 people who don't want to do broadcasting or journalism someday. You know what? Say, hey, look, we're going to create a little broadcasting elective. We're going to give you a chance to maybe get a credit if you do a basketball game. We're going to put masks on you. We're going to make you go through the protocol, but you're going to sit underneath this camera, and while one person is going to use the camera and the other person is going to go play by play, and you're just going to make this a really cool special event. Why can't that be done? Why am I not seeing basketball games all over the internet right now? Because people care about these kids and want to make it special for their kids. I'm fired up about this, Pat, because I'm tired of the kids right now are absolutely getting the shaft, and I'm tired of it.
Yeah, I understand that. I think there's definitely missing elements to the experience. Over the last, I guess, dating back until, to early spring this year, things have completely been different. And I'm kind of being convicted right now, because I feel like we use that word hope. And, I would say when you have hope, you're motivated towards, a certain goal, or whether it be a short-term goal or a long-term goal. Mm-hmm. And a part of having a goal is having a clear planned or a clear goal-directed plan, I guess I would say, having a focus and an emphasis on that hope. And even myself, I've been saying it for a few weeks now, that I'm worried that at the beginning of the year, a lot of our sports are going to be shut down, and we're probably going to sink back into the reality that we knew back in March, when a lot more businesses were shut down, and our country and our world as we know it was kind of locked down. And it just occurred to me that I've been focusing on that expectation of things aren't going to go the way that we expect it to go, as opposed to focusing on the hope and the goal of just making what we have the best, that we can make it. And I can't speak for any other school district. I just know about the different communications that we've had at Megs, and I know that the administration has done a lot. The school board, the superintendent, the athletic directors, they have done a lot to make sure that we can provide people some of these elements that are missing. Our IT folks have went above and beyond, in my opinion, to do what they need to do. They give out hotspots for the folks filming the games and whatnot. I think, Coach, I understand your frustration, your aggravation. I feel like, at the thing that sticks out to me about this entire pandemic is really the way that we have failed as a society to identify ways to impact the most damaged elements of the pandemic. Where has the pandemic caused the most damage? And when I think about that, I think about things like our elderly, who are by and large most susceptible to the virus that's floating around. I think about our businesses and some of the rules that we make kind of just arbitrarily that really don't make a lot of sense to a lot of people. But
or they work for a big corporation, but that same rule just doesn't work for the smaller business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's just, great. And there's just things that we've decided to do that, in my opinion, we do things that kind of make us feel better. We say things that make us feel better, but really they're not accomplishing anything. And it hasn't made me feel a lot of any better. And I know it hasn't made a lot of people feel a lot better. But the most damaged aspect that I feel
can I give you one? I mean, this is going to be something that I guarantee you other people have talked about as well. We saw the rule and we laughed about it, but it's just not funny. I don't think it's just not funny. It was handed down to us from the state association saying, wrestling's going to move on, wrestling's going to move forward, right? So kids are going to. So what's wrestling look like? Well, it looks like kids rolling around on a mat and really trying to take someone down, right? I mean, you got your skin on skin, you're in people's face, you're in a body part on body part. So that's the sport. That's what the sport is. But we're not allowed to shake hands afterwards.
Yeah.
So let's remove the sportsmanship for the optics of we're doing something for this pandemic's sake. If you're not allowed to shake hands, you're probably not allowed to wrestle. I mean, if we're really concerned about safety, and that's the reason why you're not allowed to shake hands, then probably shouldn't be wrestling then, And I don't even believe that. We're not seeing any issues with wrestling right now, and kids especially wrestling.
No, absolutely not.
So let these kids, when they stand up and after they've just gotten done beating the crap out of each other, and they look across there from the mat and they have a lot of respect for that guy, let them shake hands or fist bump or something. That's what you're talking about. That just doesn't make sense to me. We've dug ourselves into a rut where now it's like we can't come back from it. It's like we made so many dumb rules that we just can't come back from it. Otherwise, we're admitting that we're wrong and that we've done things really poorly.
Yeah. Jeez, that's a mouthful. I feel like that's unfortunately a major part of our lives.
It is. It's what
well, from a political perspective, we have leaders that are scared to admit that they're wrong about things. And this is true on both sides of the spectrum right now, whether you have had a governor, that supported lockdowns, or a governor that didn't support lockdowns. There were mistakes made in both realms, and they're afraid to make to admit mistakes. Even so much to talk about. They don't even want to talk about it because they're afraid it's going to make them look bad in front of the public, and they won't be reelected.
Yeah. And it's not a left issue or right issue. This is not a left issue or right issue. This is a politic issue. Regardless of where you stand, it's a sin issue is what it is. It's a pride issue. It's an ego issue because people just cannot say, you know what, I was wrong. I messed up right there. I was wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
Give me a politician that says that, and I'm telling you right now, I'm more likely to vote for him.
You're gonna vote.
I'm more likely to vote for a politician to say, you know what, I was wrong, and I'm going to make this right.
Would you be willing to post a Facebook picture of you voting for them?
Well, if you don't post the picture, you didn't really vote. Right?
I don't think they counted those ballots. Like
right.
if you don't.
That's right. Anyone who didn't post the picture didn't get their ballot counted. No.
But Coach, one of the most damaged areas of our society from this whole pandemic has been our youth, and the problem with that is the youth are least susceptible to the virus, and there's been no, most of the I say most because you can't, it's hard to gather, information in the world today that you are confident in calling it the truth.
Right.
The truth is hard to find. Right. But I would say most reports are that kids aren't a source of spreading this virus either. So kids aren't dying. They're not, and I'm, that's a general statement. I know some kids are.
As soon as you say that, Pat, you're going to get an email from someone saying, "Oh, here's a kid though out in Arkansas."
Yes, I know that. When you look at kids are,
right.
and it's a tragedy.
It is
obviously, definitely. Anytime a person dies from an illness, it's not something that you take lightly by any means. But from a percentage perspective. Kids are not highly impacted by this virus. However, they have been seriously impacted by the response to the pandemic, and in ways that I think speaks to what you're saying here. Maybe some ways are necessary, yes, but what can we do to kind of counteract some of those responses? What can we do to make this time in these kids' lives more special? Because without a doubt, and no one can deny this. If they did, they probably never went to high school, or they definitely never played sports, because when you take that element of your friends, and a large portion of your family, the crowds, out of Coach, I remember playing last year and it's just a 7th grade basketball game, and they don't even give out league championships. But the Megs was at Athens.
And that's a loud gymnasium, isn't it? The old school.
Oh my goodness,
Hoosier like gym. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I've never experienced anything like that, and I will probably remember that until my mind fails me. Right?
I was at that game.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that was exciting.
And two good teams it was like a heavyweight fight, and two good teams just pound on each other, and it was so loud. Like I remember screaming my head off, and our kids couldn't hear us. It was great. We don't have that.
A lot of energy. Yeah. You're basically scrimmaging.
We don't have that aura, and that's people say, well, it's a necessity right now. Well, okay, but what we're talking about there is things that we can't do. And we're setting aside this idea of hope, this of giving these kids something that they can remember.
Yes.
What can we do?
Yes,
that's the
Amen.
question.
Preach it.
What can we do? How can we respond to this event that we're in to get the outcome that that we would like to have?
And that's my whole point with what I started with today. And I'm glad that you brought the can't versus can issue up, because that's the issue. Okay. All right, we've had 9 months of you telling us what we can't do. Okay, if this is the reality we're given, let's regroup and let's look at what we can do. Let's look at the context within we're able to perform, and let's perform at our very best. Let's be the best that we can possibly be. And I almost sometimes think that as soon as you start talking about that, someone's going to go, well, but that's good news, though. And we're not allowed to have good news in 2020. It's going to be bad. And I'm done with that. I'm pushing back on anybody that gives me that, because, Pat, the reality, people will tell you this as well. You'll hear this one as well. Come on, it's just a small sacrifice. It isn't going to last forever. These kids are going to be fine. I've heard that enough. These kids are going to be fine. But you know what? When someone says that, they don't realize. When you pause and consider this reality, we are changing these decisions that we're making. We're changing the course of kids' lives.
Yeah,
especially kids that are juniors and seniors in high school right now. For example, some of these kids wanted to get a scholarship to play ball in college. Some of the kids need a scholarship to go to college. right?
Yes.
And so when you remove the number of scholarships that are going to be available to them because we're continuing to give more eligibility to students that are in college currently, that means coaches are not going to be able to go out and recruit. Oh, and then also the NCAA is going to say, hey, you're not allowed to go and recruit. Well, then the kid's got to do his own type of recruiting, making videos, contacting coaches, doing whatever he can do to get seen, to get whatnot. I personally know some kids who have thrown their hands up and said, it's not even worth it. I'm not getting a chance to play in college, so why even try? I know a handful of kids this past year that graduated this past year who wanted to play ball in college. They let that dream go. They let it go. Now, doesn't mean that they're not going to be okay. You know, like someone says, oh, they'll be okay. I know they'll be okay because they're great kids. They're smart kids, and they're just going to pivot and go a different direction. But the reality is we're changing the course of their lives. We're changing their direction. And some of the kids' direction is going to be just fine, but others, it's not going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that's a good point. Not everybody is going to be okay.
Yeah,
you know, I think that's one of those situations where people are just taking, you know, the damage lightly. You know, that's akin to saying, well, it's just one person that died to the virus. In my opinion, it's just the elderly, right? Something like that. Whereas, you know, but this is the youth. This is the future of our world, the future of our country, and not every kid. Put this in. This is fact. Yeah. Not every kid is going to be okay. Some kids are killing themselves right now.
Did you read the story about the kid in Maine?
I did not, no.
Last week, kid named Spencer Smith, 16 years old. Played high school football. Killed himself. Committed suicide. Left a note. This was everywhere. This was on NBC News. People magazine, I think, wrote a story on it. His parents, the way they responded, they said that they saw, like they could see, like they never would have dreamed that their child would come to this. They said that they did see, you know, just a difference in his demeanor, but the difference was they thought it was just kind of normal because it's like, well, instead of going to football practice, because his sports were shut down. He lives in Maine. So, I mean, in New England, it's a whole different world up there than what it is here as well. Anyway, if we have any listeners from up there, maybe you can chime in and let us know how things are. But I've got relatives that live in Connecticut, and so I understand a little bit about it and talking with them. But so he was shut down. He was locked down completely, basically. And very social kid, had a lot of friends, said, you know, for a while, you know, we could connect remotely and through Snapchat and whatnot, but, you know, there's just nothing like the face-to-face stuff is what, you know, the way the mother and father spoke about him after the fact. And they said, you know, looking back, we could see little things that we should have caught, but we didn't realize that it was that his mental health was deteriorating as bad as what it seemed. Like, you know, it was like, you know, this was a kid that, you know, was great, you know, really good in class, really good in sports, really good. I mean, it was almost like little by little he started giving up. This is the way his father put it. Little by little he started giving up on things. Like, well, football's gone. He's 16. Football, you know, and so he said he stopped lifting weights. Stop. You know, why go and lift weights if I don't have a purpose for it, right? Well, you do. Yeah. You do have a purpose for it, but it's so easy for us to say that to a kid, right? You do. Be the best you can be today. But no, this kid's working out because he wants to be a great football player. That's his purpose, right?
Yes. And I'm reading here. It says they changed it to flag football.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm not going to do that, you know. Well, so he left a note. He left a note, and his father commented on a few of the things that he said in the note. And he said, you know, one of the things he said was that he felt like he was just locked in this house, and he didn't want to be locked in the house anymore. He wanted to be free from that, and the way that he freed himself from it was by taking his own life. Yeah,
I'm reading it now. I actually did not see this. One of the things that he mentions in his note is the way that he didn't like being in school under the way that, you know, they had to be in school. And actually my kids have commented on this too. They've actually said, there's days that they would just rather stay at home because it's not like you're really with your friends anyway because of the, the social distancing measures and things like that. And, again, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying that's what we shouldn't be doing. I'm saying,
we can't take it for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. It is having an impact. It's not like saying, well, we got to, they're in school, well, they're in school. Well, but it's a lot different.
Yeah.
It's not the same school.
And you know what, Pat? I'm not in work right now.
Yeah, neither am I.
I mean, it's work, but there's so much that happens in work that you took for granted until this happened. Absolutely. I don't, if you think about this, the only reason why we speak to coworkers right now is because we got a meeting scheduled. So you got a meeting on Zoom or on Teams, and that meeting is scheduled, and it says, oh, so-and-so started the meeting. Do you want to join? Yeah. So I'll join. So now we're we might talk for a little bit before the meeting on, video chat, but then the meeting starts, and what happens as soon as the meeting's over? Hey, see everybody. And then boom, we're off. Next time we see them, next meeting. You know what we're missing? When I decide I want to leave my office and walk down to the restroom, at the same time, my coworker across the hall, Erin, she goes to the restroom as well. And all the way down the hall, we walk and talk about, hey, your kid's got a game tonight? Oh, yeah, sure. Or I go in and heat up something in the microwave in the kitchen. And as I'm doing that, I pass 4 or 5 different people, and we chat a little bit about how life is going or what the weather's like. Or, hey, let's go get a coffee down here at Brennan's. And all of those little in-between, we're missing all the in-between moments. And if we're missing them, then our kids are missing them 100 times more.
Absolutely. We're creatures of habit, and we're creatures that are not meant to be alone.
Yeah.
So when there's a jolt to those things, it has an impact. Yeah. For sure. No doubt about that. And we're talking about our kids.
Right.
We're talking about, people that are trying to figure out the world around them and how they fit in it and, their roles. And right now that is just completely a mess. And it's difficult to navigate for me, for an adult that is I'll say privileged and very blessed in the situation I am. And I find difficulty in it. I can imagine how a kid might feel, especially a kid that doesn't have the privileges that I would say I have or my kids have. And I think about that often. I just the way that we're trying to teach our kids right now. Teachers are kind of being thrown under the bus.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, they can't win either way.
They can't. They're not. They weren't trained to do this, and really, you can't. I mean, the system right now is not set up for instruction. Mm-hmm. It's just not. It's not easily done, and I
see that stress. And my wife is in charge of online learning in the Athens City School District. Yeah. I see that stress, and I understand that firsthand or secondhand, but definitely firsthand since we are one when you're married. So, yeah.
And it's a snowball effect because the kids are frustrated, the parents get frustrated. Mm-hmm. They blame the teachers. Teachers get frustrated, and it's then obviously that rolls down to the IT folks who's trying to figure out how to move.
That's right. Well,
I mean,
that's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah,
it is. It really is. And I've been in this situation because when Ohio University had to go fully remote, IT was asked to basically spearhead that movement, and you see it firsthand of how difficult and how many moving pieces there are to just say, okay, this is a in-person environment. Let's move it completely remote.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of pitfalls there and a lot of challenges that, there's a lot of efficiency you lose, and you don't, I guess, one thing that hopefully we take out of this experience that we're having is that we appreciate some of the things that maybe we didn't appreciate before.
I think we can grow in gratitude right now more than ever. I think, and maybe that's the appropriate conclusion for this podcast today. And maybe the transition that we need to make is you said it. Let's not focus on what we can't do. We've had enough of that. Let's think about what we can do. And one of the things that we can do is we can pause for a moment and just and list all the things that we're grateful for. We can sit down and say, you know what, I do know that you people who work in athletics, you know, and you are supporting our student athletes. And so I'm going to send them a note, you know, I'm going to send them a note, right? Everybody's tired of looking at a screen. So you know what, let's write some handwritten notes for this. Let's go back old school for a little bit. Let's go down and get some stamps. Let's get some envelopes. Let's get some paper, some cards, and let's write. We sent out more Christmas cards this year, actual Christmas cards, than we have probably in the last 10 years, because they were mostly just digital cards. And you know what? I'm tired of looking at digital stuff. I want to open some mail. By gosh, I want to see some mail. I want to hold a card in my hand. And I just think those are really good things, you know. And there's one thing that I would say that we can do right now that is so desperately needed in our world right now. And you know, this is for parents to their kids. This is for, you know, teachers to their students, and it's vice versa as well. Parents to teachers and students toward teachers, and you know, athletes toward coaches. Man, I would not want to be. I do not envy you as a scholastic sports coach right now. I just cannot imagine all of it. I mean, it's one thing. As a varsity coach in high school sports, we always joke about how you do about 30% of what you actually do is coaching, right? The 70% is just bureaucracy and dealing with leadership issues and things like that, and, you know, administrative issues. I can't imagine what that ratio is today under COVID. Yeah, I just can't imagine. It's and people don't realize that there's probably very little coaching going on because there's so many things that you're having to worry about. And so here's the word that I want to give to everybody: grace. Extend grace. We need it. We need it so badly. I actually said this to a friend recently. Was talking with someone. I'm not going to name any names or anything like that. But you know, this is a person who has chosen to not allow their athletic child to go out and be like among his friends. Like, they're doing fully online learning. He's an athlete, not allowed to play any sports right now. Basically, it's you know, people have different perspectives of the virus based on their own health conditions and things like that.
Sure, exactly.
And this is
that's the way. Yeah,
this is a family who's decided we're worried about it. We're concerned about it, right? And so we're gonna do this. And one of the things that was brought up was they started noticing some of the same mental health stuff, and so they sought out some counseling options, and you know, kind of, you know, making light of it and saying, you know, you just need to really stop being a turd, you know. And I walked away after that. You know, we just kind of laughed about it and everything. But I walked away after that, and I just kept thinking about it all day long. I kept thinking, you know, if it were me, like, I think back when I was 15 years old and I were walking through this, you'd need more than counseling for me.
Yeah.
I'd be more than a turd. And I just think we got to extend some grace. We've got to comprehend grace at a time like this and extend it. Because I cannot fathom the despair that people are probably feeling right now. I remember how involved I was in my own kids' their recruitment. You know, I knew that they wanted to go and play ball in college. I knew it was a goal. I knew they worked hard for it. I knew sports were, you know, it wasn't everything to us, but it was a big deal. Pat, I'd be losing my mind right now. If this was happening back in 2007, I'd be losing my mind. And so for you parents that are walking through this right now with your kids, first, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you're having to do this, but man, I feel for you. I really do.
Yeah, I think there's you could use a lot of cliches right now that would fit and make people roll their eyes. But you know, I think did I say May? Did I say we were out of this in May?
That was your prediction.
I do. I think things will. I think we'll start seeing the light then, for sure. You know, but say it's the end of summer. Say it's a little bit longer than that. We have to have a mindset of just kind of doing better every day, and better in the aspect of of, as you say, sharing grace, extending grace, but just emphasizing that hope that we have.
Yeah.
I'm reading this article here on Spencer Smith. His dad is named Jay, and it looks like here that the reason that the people are knowing about this is because the parents wanted people to know about it. They wanted to share the story, and
that's a point in and of itself, right there, isn't it?
Yeah, and he said he wanted people to know there's help out there, and what we're going through, this pandemic can't last forever. And if you're feeling alone and depressed, you need to reach out because things will get better. And his final line here is a lesson for the ages, and I think it's something that we all are guilty of not doing, and we all need to get better at. I think I don't think you can ever do it too much. And the line is, I ask parents to talk to their children.
Yeah.
So often in life, we, as parents, we perceive troubles that our kids are having. We perceive successes, we perceive good days and we perceive bad days, and we leave it at that. We leave it at the perception, and we don't take that extra step of, adding the communication to it. And I think that makes all the difference in the world. It's that extra effort to understand, further of what our kids see and what they're experiencing, and that's true in sports. My gosh, there's so many different scenarios where that's true, but obviously true in life. And right now, this pandemic is kind of a microcosm of that that idea.
It is as big as it feels. It is a microcosm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because communication is always the big issue. It's always the big issue. I talk with married couples as I do pre-marriage counseling for whenever I do weddings for people who want to get married. And one of the things that we talk about is, the main overarching theme of every session that we sit down and discuss regarding marriage is communication. Because one of the questions I ask them to do is research, what's some of the leading causes of divorce, and they'll usually come back with argument, fights about money and fights about sex, because that's when it comes down to it, it's those two issues that we fight about most in marriage, right? Or that we have the most tension over, right? The most disagreement over. We focus on those two things: financial issues and sexual relationship issues.
But the underlying problem,
the overarching problem, is not those two things. It's communication. Because here's the thing: everyone's going to have those two problems all the time. You're not going to avoid those two problems. You're not going to avoid those two kinds of conversations. Whether you have plenty of money or not enough money, you're going to argue about it. You're going to have struggles with it. You're going to have disagreements about it, and you're going to have disagreements about sexual issues as well in a marriage. Here's the thing: if you talk about all this stuff, if you just talk to one another, it makes all the difference in the world. So the marriages that succeed versus the ones that fail aren't because the ones that succeed didn't have those issues. It's because they communicated about those issues.
Good stuff. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And that applies
Focus
for anything.
on the issues. Yeah, it does.
It applies to everything. Yeah. It's not that, teams that succeed, and businesses that succeed, families that succeed over the ones that don't. It's not because they don't experience adversity. They experience adversity. They work through it together. They communicate about it. They say, "Here's our problem. Okay, let's not focus on the problem. Let's focus on solutions. We know what the problem is. That's good. So let's look at the solutions. Let's move on from what we can't do. Let's move on to what we can do."
Geez, and boy, are we not divided right now?
Yeah.
Due to this pandemic. I mean,
yeah.
What a perfect example.
Yeah. It is, and we're divided. I guarantee it'd be nice to be a fly on the wall on every single person that's listening to this podcast episode, right? Because even listening to this episode, things that you and I say or have said, over the last 35 minutes or so, there are going to be people who feel strongly against one thing that we say or strongly for one thing that we say, and then there might be somebody 2 miles down the road listening who is just the exact opposite. They're strongly for and strongly against the other issues. And that's just the nature of this whole thing. And it's why I think it's probably one of the reasons why you and I have been pretty diplomatic up to this point and kind of avoided. We've gone 9 months and avoided talking about this pandemic in almost of our podcasts. And one of the reasons why is because, look, we're getting that in every other media outlet. You don't need it in ours, right? But the reality is, as we come down to the end of the year, you and I know things are different. It's been different for us and the way we go about the podcast. It's been different for the teams we coach and the family, the kids we raise. And so, hey, you know what? Let's chat about it for a little bit. And that's kind of been the issue tonight here.
Yeah, and the podcast is called The Coaching Life, and at the forefront of that is our youth, and how we can make those our kids, the best people, the best citizens, that they can be.
Yeah.
And I think it would almost be negligent on our part not to talk about some of these troubles that our kids are facing right now due to this pandemic. And without a doubt, we need to focus more on that as a society. As parents, as leaders, as politicians, we need to. It's an issue. It's a struggle that we need to pump some hope into.
Yes.
We need to fix that. And, because if it lasts for 6 more months, it's going to get worse for 6 more months. Because it'll probably continue to get worse a little bit after that, because it takes a while to rebound from it. So
everything that's bad because of this is going to get worse the longer it goes.
Yeah.
And so if it's bad now, it's going to get even worse. I mean, it's not like it's, and so knowing that, then we got to dig in and fight hard to make better the things that we know that we have control over to make better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're at here tonight and what we're talking about.
Yeah. And from my perspective, I mentioned before that I've kind of been talking about how after the first that I think, things are going to make a turn for the worst. I need to check myself on that, and because there's without a doubt, because I feel it. It's a negative feeling in my heart. Like when I'm presenting it, I'm distraught about it.
Sure.
I don't feel good about it. But the problem with that is it's just that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm giving out negative feeling.
You're like a baseball coach who steps outside on a Tuesday afternoon when they got a game that night and it smells like it's going to rain. You start immediately thinking, oh boy, we're going to get a rain out tonight. Or do we call it off now? Are we going to start playing? And then all of a sudden it's going to start raining. I mean, I know that feeling, man. I know that feeling on a small scale, but that's it. That's
yeah. And here's the problem as a player, and even as a coach too, as anyone associated with that, when you begin to kind of shut down that, so you're like, we're probably not going to play today. You shut down a little bit. Because you have that feeling of when you wake up in the morning as the day goes on, you're getting ready and you're getting anxious, and it's a good feeling.
Anticipation is like a drug, man.
Yeah,
anticipation is
up and stuff like that. And then you hear, it's raining, we're probably not going to play. It's very difficult in those situations to find out later that you are going to play, and then go out and compete at your highest level, right? This is the same thing as because I know my kids have heard me say it.
Sure,
I know they have, right? And I never thought to stop to think, how are they perceiving that? What impact is that having on them when I'm saying, we're probably going to be done soon. In their mind, they're probably thinking, my season's coming to an end, and there's some psychological changes that happen in your mind.
Sure.
Psychological, that's what that means. Psychological changes happen when you hear things like that. So, I think, you spoke to me here with this message, and I'm glad you brought it up. We're missing some small things, and the small things do matter. They definitely matter. We need to do a better job of focusing on ways that we can look forward to tomorrow as opposed to expecting, the worst. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Hope. There's always hope, right? I love the movie there.
Always.
The Lord of the Rings. You ever watch the Lord of the Rings, Coach?
Not for 5 minutes. I know they're all like 6 hours long, and I've not watched a single episode of any of them.
Did you read the books?
No.
Oh.
No.
Oh, well. I
Sorry.
guess you're not as...
I missed out on all that. Yeah.
I am too.
Yeah.
I play video games. You don't.
I've never done Star Wars either.
I don't know. We can even continue with this podcast as partners. Yeah, this is earth shattering. We probably just lost all of our listeners too, because I can't imagine nobody watching Star Wars. But at any rate, Lord of the Rings, they're holed up in this castle, and the enemy's coming down on them. There's a young kid there, and he's got a sword, and the king, or the guy that becomes king, grabs his sword, and he's looking at it, and the young boy says, the older guys are saying that we won't live through the night. There's no hope. And the king says, this is a pretty nice sword, and he hands it back to him, and he says, there's always hope. That's the truth. There's always hope.
And the point, I'm guessing part of that point being, you create some of it for yourself. Here's your sword, buddy. It's an awfully nice sword. Go and use it. I've never seen Lord of the Rings. My guess is that the idea there was, hey, there is hope, and you got to participate in it. You need to be a participator. It's not always just about that's something that's out there somewhere that's just going to be thrown on you, right? If you want, you want it, sometimes you got to participate. We got to create hope for other people as well. Absolutely. And sometimes there's not. I mean, sometimes we need a higher hope that we can't attain to ourselves, that is sort of imputed upon us, and that's where you and I, that's where we cling to our faith, because that's where our ultimate hope comes from. But because we know that, it's our responsibility, you and me and every other coach out there. If you have hope, give it to somebody else. This is the Coaching Life podcast. So I guess tonight the focus was on life, right? We spend a lot of time. We spend 51 weeks out of the year talking about coaching, right? Here's life, right? Coaches, give your life to somebody else. Give your life to somebody else, especially your kids.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.